Hey everyone, I wanted to get on just so that we can talk about some of these structure breaks, because we very precisely timed a few things this afternoon, especially this point in the session today. Okay, and then we have some very good odds right now if they're able to kind of push and clear 7,300 at this time. That was kind of the idea, because if they can, then we're on our way for our 7,305, 7,309 retest, hopefully today. Okay. This area had pretty good odds. Let me just delete this. This is just the price action we could maybe expect here, kind of relative to what they want to do. If they actually want to expand us on the session today, which I didn't really have high odds of them doing, but if they did, then they would clear the 7,300s at this point in time and clear 09 before end of session. Okay, if they did that, that's where we could get 73, 12, 14, 17, 21, 22, so on and so forth. I'm only really targeting these areas here. Like, these are going to be the big spots for today. This was 50% of the time interval that's linked to real time. I had extremely high odds at 212, 213, 215, 221, 220 to trigger 72.95.50. This is a calculated spot that's linked to the 72, 79, 50, 72, 78, 50 break. Okay, which in theory is basically linked back to highs, because we're breaking off like an 8.25 range. Okay, so if we get these kind of structure breaks, that's where we could look for 7301, 7302. Okay, so we're probably gonna, I don't have them marked, but we're probably gonna see a lot of overhead around this area here for starters. This was the consolidation spot. These were the calculated areas, which we did an insanely good job holding, especially during that period. Because remember what I said, we didn't really have any odds. Okay, I didn't have any odds. These were the spots. Okay, these here. And I didn't have any odds between after 220, 212, 221. And you could see, this was perfect, you guys. Look, they held exactly 90.25. That was the calculated range off our 72, 78, 72, 79, 75 break, okay? So this was a perfect time to digest those calculated ranges. This was the best time to try bringing it back, as this is linked to the midpoint of these time intervals, okay, to end of session. So in other words, basically these times of day here are linked to these times of day here, okay, which are basically linked to these points in time here, okay? Especially if they want to keep this durational till close. Does that make sense? So half of 107 basically. You'd be looking at 53 and a half. So 53 and a half minute intervals would be right around here, and that's exactly when they retested 05. Okay, if we look at it from here, it would be a little bit closer to here. So 52, again, it's these points here. And then last but not least, off like that 221 flip, the final odds were right around here. So like 40, they're basically around 49 to 52 minute intervals, okay? Do you see it? This is off our 220. 49. Okay. And here. So these are perfect points in time to basically break and extend. I didn't measure anything from the holds or here, but I mean, I guess we could if you guys want, like the secondary midpoints. I don't really care to. It's up to you guys. Like that would be mostly from here to here. It'd kind of be like 25, 26 minute intervals, or maybe from here to here. So I had pretty high odds for 7300s to occur right here. I guess if they're testing 72.99, 50 here, then what do you guys think? I had highest odds around these points in time, but I mean, I guess like for them to clear 7300, I guess they could do it by the midpoint if they hold off 94, 95. Okay, so I didn't manually calculate those. I just figured that, which we can, I guess, off 305 and 310. So 22 to 23 minutes. They're probably close to imbalance prints, like 327, 328. Okay, let's see. So 20 minutes. Yeah, they're right into 327 and 330, basically. Okay. And this isn't for end of day. This is for these odds here around 7,300, around 349, 350, 342, 350. Okay. That would put some odds in this period here. If we're looking at end of day, it's still going to be closer to 25-minute intervals. Those are probably closer to the 35, 36. Yeah, they are. It's basically just the generic times of day then for those periods. What do you guys think? You think that will trigger 7309 today like we wanted? Or you guys think no? I'm going to set that for 2 minutes, so try getting as many votes as possible. I would say if they can trigger 7300s by the midpoint between here and here, because this was the highest odd of getting these 7300 breaks, then those odds are very, very high. Okay, because we had odds of continuation after the close today. I don't know if anyone is reporting today, but... And Apple's getting very close to hitting our targets. I just marked these just to kind of see the clearance break, but the actual target was this 285.26. I'm just going to set that. This one kind of got stuck. This one had some intervals on Poet. Yeah, today's theme was slow and steady, kind of, based on the fact that they digested overnight. Okay, they cleared 6.7, which is above 6.4, but not above 7.2. Is okay. It just meant that it could be a very slow first half in the session today. But you guys all should have done super, super well. I didn't take any covers until here. That was my first cover. And I left the second half of my position till end of day today, because odds were very high for what point in the day today, especially if they met conditions at these points in time. Okay, specifically around this period here and now this period here. Okay, until end of session. So let's set some alerts. 73:01:25. Okay, everyone's voting yes. Now that scares me. Do we have to hit 7309 in real time today? based on what we looked at? No. But if they did, we have pretty high odds of continuation flips, and these are calculated into session open. Okay, so when session opens, I wouldn't be surprised if they just had like a nice continuation run basically to here. Okay, because there's a lot of odds within that first hour of session open. So we'll see what they do here. This one's losing kind of its structure, so that's probably going to run until after the close, because a lot of these odds on this were mainly if they could sustain that 920 area and then retrace 3.6, which they did, but then it got stuck. This was the 3.6 retracements here. Okay, these were the midpoints, but then you see the range reduction. I would say that this reduction right after that 301 calculated time, probably what delayed this from getting those real-time structure breaks. And that's crazy because it's 17 cents. I feel like that would have been the break of 50 and likely the breaks of 5457. So we can check back on this one into close. Tesla's been kind of just stuck today beneath that 401, 402. These were our initial targets on Tesla too on a 388 hold. This one has been pretty steady. This one, the more calculated spots though are closer to 111 on Intel. So might have to just watch to see where that one closes today. And same sort of thing with ES. The odds during these windows are not super, super high. Okay, but they're what could keep us in place. So this would be the next period here at 322, and you can see like the slight reductions between 315, 313, 312. But I didn't really have super high odds of clearing 7,300 at this time. So those could have been some earlier odds. These points would probably make a bit more sense because these would be more linked to this period here. So let's see. 72.99 retest here off 322. Based on these end of day intervals and specific to our 304, 05, 06, like these periods here, there's definitely some odds that they could try coming back and taking them out. These would be like the 17-minute flips. Do you see it? Because half of 34 would be 17. Okay. Because these were the end of day odds around 340, 45. So they definitely have some odds at these points in time. It's just, even if it doesn't break, it's not a deal breaker for us today. Okay, because we still have the window until end of session. It's just this would help us do what? What would this help us do? If they trigger 7,300 as early as this period here, what does this technically help us do? Because we don't really have to until this period, but if we did at this time of day, then what can this help us do basically? And specific to our 344, 348, 350, okay, like these periods here, which we knew we had a lot of late day odds in the session today. What could this help us do? Yes, and what else could it help us do? Because these would be the midpoints basically of here, and then this was the midpoint between our calculated times here and here. So these being met here is great. Keep expansion targets in play for all-time high. Well, yeah, basically give us odds to expand the zone, okay, to 73.20s, okay, 73.14, 17, 19, 22, 25, the areas I sent this morning. Okay, so these areas here, 7, whatever I sent this morning. I don't remember, but it was off. It was basically off our opening conditions this morning. Because these were linked with opening conditions. I'll just copy paste. And these were linked to opening conditions. 6, 7 is technically a core area. It's not the best core area, but it's what could give us some odds of getting those 7320s today, okay? We also had some tiny odds of getting 7320s today based on what? What did we have some odds of getting 7320s from? They're the extension trigger off 7309. Okay. And remember what I said the other day? They want to probably make people more mad, and then they're just going to ramp it to 7320s, 7330s. So far, that seems like what they want to do, especially if we got our digestion. So remember what I said earlier too? So aside from opening range, it's also in line with this. Okay, remember how I said market's kind of working in those 20.75 intervals? Okay, 20.75 off of highs is obviously 7320. Okay, so that's another way that they could give us those core breaks if they trigger these areas here. And then another 20.75 points off 7309 would be those 7320s again. So it's just how they can have those potentially triggered today. They're not required though, by any means. Some range reduction coming in here. Again, market doesn't have to break 7,300 at this time. This is just what would help give these odds in real time. This was the more higher probability into end of session, but we'll see what they do here. Apple's getting super close. This one's stalled. This one also kind of stalled. Remember, we never really had any consolidation between these ranges in here. If you look at this on like even a 30-minute. Okay, we didn't really digest between here. So that's why if they want to stall a little tiny bit, like if you just look at it like this, between here, okay, and here, technically they could. Does that make sense? Which is why it could be a little bit slower. So there's some digestion that's taking place. So far they haven't really digested this part though. This is the only part that hasn't really been digested. And that's another reason why I figured they might wait till end of day. So this seemed like the more ideal area to digest 90 to 95. And then this to me seemed like the more ideal area to digest 96, 95 to 7,300. Does that make sense? So while they have some odds at these points in time, they're likely to reduce it, which is exactly what they're doing. I just want to delete these to see how much reduction this is, because that's very, very close to highs, and especially at those points in time. How many points is that so far? 2.75? Those are probably right around here, which are those areas I figured they could probably push this to. So, okay, so let's mark these. Do you see what they did? Essentially, they had some odds back in here, okay? Right here, off this 2.6, 2.7, they reduce range just slightly. So they're being very, very, very strategic about this. And this is better, actually, because this gives you better odds to digest this area a little bit more before breaking it, which I think is better, okay? these were the better odds for these end of day breaks, like so close to here. Why is that doing that? Okay. Here. So we're reducing around this point in time. To me, I think that makes more sense because especially if they need to digest and delay. That was exactly how I drew it earlier, if you guys remember, before I started the session. Like this. This looks so crazy. Like this. Right? To me, that makes more sense. And then they bring it down. Right? Especially at this time, like around 325, 330. And then they later bring it back up. So far, that's actually what's playing out here. We'll see if they can... This is playing out. We had it drawn kind of like this, okay, where they could just stall and then give us the end of day breaks. I guess you could put it more like this. And I could be wrong, obviously, but based on PA, this would be the healthiest way for us to break 7,300 again. So far, what they've done today and last night is actually impressive, okay? The way they've digested this is super impressive. This is exactly what we wanted to see. Thank you so much for the sub. Okay, so do you guys understand why I would have rather delayed till this point in time to break 7,300? It's a very, very important aspect to kind of understand just because it helps you gauge not only range but price action, because I feel like if they broke at this time, it just gives too much risk of basically getting to here, okay, and then stalling 7302, which is not really the best area to stall. Does that make sense? Because if anything, we want to try getting at least 7305. Getting 02 is not great, especially the second time around, and that could cause us to come right back here, digest, and then it basically gives us an entire reset, because the whole reason why we had a reset back down was because we stalled. We didn't achieve 730509, okay? Do you want to do that a second time? The only benefit now is we finally digested this area, so that can help us avoid that volatility risk, okay? Because we already did that yesterday, which is good. But we probably want to like at least break at least 7305, even if they can't get 09. We have until technically the 6th. If they extend us until the 9th, I already went over these scenarios earlier, which I'll send those notes because it's a lot to discuss again, but that's what could allow for some double inside days if they don't break us today, but then they sustain the zone, let's say, above 7281, 86, 87. It would just make it a very, very tight range kind of scenario if that was the case. So let's see here. These were some of the earlier odds. These were the better odds. I'm just going to set a 922 alert on this one and 936. from a zone theory, this is basically going from this bear neutral zone to this bear neutral zone too, okay? So that's from base theory, that's another way that you guys can think about this. Which is 100 points. Which is another reason why 7,300 could be very heavy, because instead of them holding 7,206 back here, I know they bounced off of it right away, but they did take it down to 7,200, okay? So this can also play a pretty big factor as to maybe why they could stall the 7,300 area instead. Kind of is the same thing as like the slight reductions in range. And that's what I think could make this area a little bit more volatile, or reduce those odds till end of session today, which kind of keeps it an open realm between 7,288 basically to 7,300, okay? Better areas would be around 7,291 or 92 to 7,295. Since they already digested this, okay. So let's see, another reduction stick off 3.5. These were the mid intervals between these points here, so these were the later times that were linked to end of session, okay? Are you guys okay if I delete these? Because I mainly wanted just the main points in time today, which were these points here, so we'll see if 3.6 can retrace back over 9.5 and immediately negate to keep these odds in here. This is kind of an open window, like between 340, 344, 48, so I'm pretty sure there was an odd at 342. And then we're obviously going to watch 350. I always watch 54, 55, but odds for today's session were basically right into the close. Okay? And then just after the close, like the first 5 minutes. So let's see if they can have a negation here and then breaks back over 9.6 to give a retest. How many think that they're going to test between our 340 to 348 window? The best odd was between 340 and 344, I'm pretty sure, but let's see, 7,300 test by Izzy's 340 to 348 window. Basically, this would also mean that it's before the last 10 minutes of the session today. I'm only going to set that to a minute, you guys, because there's not that much time. If you guys can vote on that, please, and thank you. So it obviously makes sense that the first thing they have to do is immediately retrace off 9.4, get back over 9.5, which they're doing, 9.6. I'm not surprised to see a stick break like this because the time is coming up, so they need to get moving. 340 was the earliest odd. And then there was a second one here around 344 and 348. Can you guys vote, please? These are the points in the day that are going to basically let us know whether or not we're going to see 7309 today. This is coming back into that window here before close. Plug had its 50% intervals here, so I just wanted to kind of take a look and see if they're bringing it back above 330, 332. I had to refresh. It didn't show for me either, but when I went to go put it up a second time, it said poll was already active, which was weird. But when I refreshed the Twitch screen, it came up. I don't know why it did that. That's okay. I think the pull's done now. So I would expect some volatility in this window here. This would probably also be the time Apple tries testing that 285 if they're going to actually give us some structure breaks on the session today. No, this is more of like my own theory that I made up. But, I mean, I guess maybe it could kind of correlate with GAN theory in a way, but that's not what I'm using. Kind of more price and time. So for this to occur, I would say that they probably have to sustain, like I said, above those ranges there, like the 9295. So kind of, you could extend this a tiny bit, not too much. Like this area. Obviously staying above 9.5 would be better for odds, but that doesn't fully take away its probability for end of session today. Whereas if they stall, I think between 340, 350, our odds for triggering, I think, 09 in real time is likely reduced. But they're trying very hard to keep range constrained today, especially off certain areas that they may not want to get it to in real time, because if they did, then that's what would allow for like markets to start expanding a bit. Remember what I said earlier too, how many think that we'll hit that, and everyone voted yes. I was like, that's concerning, because usually when majority says yes, then it's usually wrong, but there's still time. The odds were mainly the final 10 to 15 minutes. Around here. So real quick in the chat, just, I'm not going to put up another poll. How many think that we can trigger a 7300 break before 350? Before 350 is very important, because 350 is obviously usually that daily trigger, but in today's scenario, these are also calculated periods around 348, okay, and 345, 44. So it would essentially be doing it ahead of those specific time intervals that are correlated to these previous price points here. Okay. You can just say yes, no. Okay. I think doing that before 350 is going to give us the better odd of maybe getting our 05, 09. Most of the odds for like after this period here were end of day, like after session closes, like real time session. So even if it was after the close, it's not the worst case scenario. It's mainly if they can at least take out that past high, because these times of day are linked to that 78, 72, 79, 75 break, okay? They're the exact time intervals from when they initially took out that high off lows. So the only way to progress is by doing what? Taking out obviously your next high, which is 7300.75, was it? So the best odds I had were around 348, 349, but I don't know. One positive here so far is they did hold 9.5. That's like the only really positive thing I noticed. But they're not quite breaking the median of like 9.7, 9.8. Okay, this one did get that break above that 332 in time, so I had some odds for this one to move after the bell today too. Mainly if they can get back here, this is what could keep it in play for here. So no mid break so far, which is, like I said, what's still keeping kind of like this range in here. Do you see what I mean? Off the 90, that's, I think we needed at least over 9.7, 9.8, especially off like a 9.5 hold. Otherwise it's going to keep these, yeah, 9.7, kind of where they're stalling. This looks like they're going to save this for end of session. So I think we could say that with them not triggering 7,300, I mean, there's still 2 minutes left, but if they don't trigger 7,300 by that 350 interval, then I could say that the odds of 7,309 in real time probably pretty reduced. Okay, but they still have those very, very, very late odds at 59, 403, 404, 05. So that's just where they could save some of the range for after the close today, which limits us a little bit in real time. But so far we haven't broken any of our spots, which again are here. Okay, that's essentially the area that you need to see it, like this white area here that I have highlighted. That's where we need to try sustaining, ideally over 9.2 though, I think, before 350. Otherwise they'll just try pushing it again. Okay, let's do one last pull before 350 here. I did cover half, like I said, off that 72.95 test earlier back in here, and I left the other half just to kind of see if we get the 7,300 breaks in real time today. Max range for real time session highs are in 73.01, 73.03 to 73.05. I'll set that for 2 minutes. Can you guys see that pull? I don't know why that first one didn't show up for some reason. So they're doing another reduction in range between those calculated points, which again, I think is what would have likely triggered the bigger breaks. Okay, so just be a little bit careful here because that's what could trigger back to the bottom of the zone, which is our 72.88, this area here. And specifically since they didn't sustain over 9.5 before 350. These weren't calculated times today, but I always watch 354 and 355. So I'm still gonna watch them. And I do want to calculate. Do you guys see the 3-bar down here? Off the 1 minute, 1, 2, 3, 4. That flips at 51. So they either are going to expand this down or they could try to negate immediately, which would have to occur off this. And that's right off my arrow that I have here. Okay, that was my support. So if they fail here, this is what could basically take us back to reset 72, 72, 72, 78. If they want to try holding the zone here, I do think that they have to try to immediately retrace within these next 2 minutes. And I just want to see what the range was on this stick. 6 points. And the overall range was 9.5. So 6 points would have likely triggered close to 03. The 9.5 points is probably close to that 73.07, 73.09. Yeah, it is. So stall on breaks is what could basically recycle that range down. And most importantly around this area here, like between breaking 9495. Remember how I said that these spots here are linked to these areas here? Okay, so that's what could technically return back to this range in here. I would prefer to avoid that and try staying in the zone into the close, but again, where we opened today wasn't the highest for odds, so that's why I wouldn't be fully surprised if they did do something like that on a 7300 stall. Take a look at it on here too. This is kind of like what I was saying earlier, if they take it from this orange zone to here and stalling at those pretty calculated time intervals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th bar is going to be off 54. I'm pretty sure that they reduced the range for real time. Was it mandatory that we test 730509 today, or even 7300, based on what we discussed this morning? No, it's not. Ideally, we just wanted to at least try getting into the zone near 72, 88, 91, 92, 94, digest. It's not preferably by the 6, like you could do it today. It's just if we don't, it's not the worst case scenario, but it just becomes a lot heavier for like us to sustain basically these core ranges, okay? Otherwise it'll take us back to this yellow box. That's a really good short into the close though, off the 9-6 stall. And specifically off those time intervals. These were probably some of the earlier clues, but again, it wasn't fully required to break at these points. All right, this will be an interesting question. How many think that they can re-trigger 7-8 to 8-1 based on them stalling? And how many think that they could still keep it between this 9-1 to 9-5 into close? Because those were more calculated spots. These areas are what's linked to here, okay? So if they really want to keep the short going, this would probably be my max range into the close. Keeping it right in between would be keeping it between 8-8, 90, 9-1, 9-2, this area in here. Let me just delete these so I can see it better. So far 8-3 off the 5-5. This is also the 7th bar, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, 8th, 9, 10. So final bars would be right into the close. What do you guys think? Pin the close. This is a very cool spot because it's a 7300 stall and we still have support at 72, 78. Set that for 2 minutes. Basically going back in here would just reset the open today off here, and that's what would kind of give us an odd of coming back to core ranges overnight, trying to reset the same scenario. I talked about this earlier, this exact scenario of us stalling 7300. I have it recorded. I'll post the notes tonight. Who was it that was asking? Someone was asking earlier. Zabin and Josh. This is the 7300 stall scenario I discussed. Can you guys vote, please? Come on, I only set that for a minute, just so that we have... So I would prefer that they try getting back in the zone, so above 7-2-8-6, maybe back to those calculated spots, because they did have some odds, but they were mainly after the bell and into session open. Okay, so these were the higher probabilities, especially if they don't trigger 7300 in real time today, which, like I said, we didn't have super high odds of getting 7309 in real time today. It was mainly if they could trigger 7300 during these points in time. A lot of odds were for after the session today. So, okay, I'm gonna put my vote in before the final minute. We also had mass stick odds into close, so like for 359 and 4. So if they can trigger 8-8, 7285. Okay, I voted for 9-1. So I guess we'll see. Like to get it back in here basically. And this will probably be based on, okay, you see Poet's odds too here into the close. So they need a 8-8, 8-9-50 break. Otherwise, yes, they could pin those core ranges, which... These are also the prior core intervals too, so don't forget that. Like the 72, 88, 92. I just wanted them to at least pin the zone, so I voted for the 8-8 to 9-1 area. A7 is okay, that's not bad. Still not the absolute greatest spot, I guess. It's okay. And a lot of this makes sense even just based on where they opened today. So we had a 4.5 point reduction based on the fact that they opened us near 72.67 versus 72.72. Okay, or 72.78. All of that technically reduces range. We had a window here after the bell, so I am gonna stick around to see if they try to immediately negate this here. This one had odds after the close. Gold is kind of still stuck. Tesla stalled and came back. So what I mean by reductions is where we opened today already put us at a slight disadvantage, okay? So off of 6.5, let's say, versus 7.2. It's 4.5 points off of 6.7 versus our 7.8. That's already an 11 point overall reduction in range. These are likely very much linked to like the 73.09, 73. 01, 03, 04. Okay, I just want to see these end of day odds. Our overall reduction was 15 points. There's a lot of confluence around that 73.11. So A7 isn't terrible, you guys. I think that that could still keep it in the zone. Overnight conditions, I would say that to avoid going back to this area here between 72, 37, 45, 48, 52, they likely have to try sustaining above 7.2, 7.8 for starters, and then stay zone bound so that they can progress overnight. We had higher odds anyway after session closes today and mainly into the opening session. So I don't know if you guys want these, or mainly like within the first 10, 13 minutes. And then I had some odds at like 6, 44, 45, 47, and right into 7. So that could mean that they could gap up the session, I guess, depending on what they do here. But I'm thinking that if we close the actual session today in this range between 9.1 and 9.5, they could for sure keep odds in play for 73.09 test by the 6th. Okay, I'm going to sign off. Good session today. I think we did a really, really good job navigating this, especially when they started stalling, specifically at this time. This is when I took my last cover, because you definitely did not want to be beneath 9.5 before 350. Okay, because basically if they were trading this above 9.5 here, okay, ideally 9.96, like a 9.7, 9.8, because this was a more calculated range or like midpoint. I do think that they could have not only taken out the high, but they could have maybe gotten us, you know, 73.04, 03. There still could have been some reduction in range, and that's mainly because of where we opened. But do you see how even this 6 points or 6.25 points could have gotten us a retest of highs? Okay, even if they stalled or whatever the case is, I don't think that going back beneath 9.550 was the best case here, because 9.550 was that calculated range. Okay, so you would have ideally wanted to get above here, stay above here, and I think this would have given us that 7,300 retest basically. The exact range I think was 6 points, so 6 points above our calculated spot of 9,575 would be 73.01. If they kept it at least over 9.5, it would have given us 73.01. Okay, at our 729475, 7305, 75. So basically back to all-time highs. Okay, so that's where the reduction came in, and it's mostly based on them closing a little too low there. Okay, so to get the 7300 retest, you need back over 9550, long story short. Okay, and ES did have some odds after the bell here to try basically getting it back in this range in here. So I just wanted to see if they can get back over that 90, 25, 91. That's the first trigger. And ideally at this point in time, they're holding A8 here, then there's some odds that they could bring it back basically into close. So I would love to see them close at least over like 9.1, 9.5 would be the best, but okay, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, guys. I'll see you